Welcome, everybody. We're going to give it a couple more minutes before we get started, but thanks for joining us. Okay, well, we have 5:31, so I think respecting everyone's time, we'll go ahead and get started. Hi, my name is Laura Kaifas. I'm with the Tempe Neighborhood Services Office, and I'll be serving as your host tonight. As far as presenters, we have folks from our traffic engineering department as well as Tempe Police. And I will let them introduce themselves. Ellie, how about we start with you and then over to Kathy.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. My name is Ellie Velosin. I'm a senior civil engineer in the traffic engineering department.
Hi, everybody. I am Kathy Hall. I'm the city traffic engineer.
Good evening, everyone. Lieutenant Martin McManus. I work for the Tempe Police Department. I've been there for approximately 15 years, and I'm currently assigned to the Traffic Bureau.
Good evening. I'm Sergeant Greg Bacon. I'm Sergeant within the Traffic Bureau. I manage our grants that we get from the Governor's Office of Highway Safety and our selective enforcement motor squad.
Okay, great. So just as far as a little housekeeping, we're going to have a brief presentation and then we'll open it up at the end for questions. You can either type it into the chat and I can read it for you, or if you'd rather ask it yourself, you'll be able to do that after we make our presentation here. Okay, over to you guys.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for being here. We're going to present our Vision Zero program and what we're doing specifically in your corridor along Scottsdale Road. So what is Vision Zero? Basically, it's a policy that focuses on safety for all road users. And the key principles are that we're trying to eliminate severe injury and fatal crashes. We believe traffic deaths and severe injuries are preventable. We know that crashes will occur, but severity can be reduced. And finally, safety is everybody's responsibility. So just a few statistics on the fatalities. From January 5th, 2015 to June 2021, we had 128 fatalities in the city of Tempe. 92 were people and vehicles, 28 were pedestrians, and 8 were cyclists. And just to touch on the Vision Zero action plan that the city prepared, the plan was completed in May of 2019. Some of you may be familiar with it. If it's available on the city's website if you want to take a look. Basically, the program takes a three-pronged approach that includes engineering, enforcement, and education. With that, I'll turn it over to Ellie.
So as Kathy mentioned, our Vision Zero action plan is available online. It was completed in 2019. And within that action plan, there's this list of initiatives or goals that we want to focus on. So you don't have to read all of this, but just so for an overview, anything highlighted in blue or green is either completed or it's ongoing, meaning that it's been initiated and there's no end date. We'll just continue it. Anything in pink is something that's in progress. It's been initiated, we'll have an end date. And then anything in yellow is for a future initiative. Overall, there's 37. Engineering is the lead focus on 29 of them, enforcement on 5, and education on 5. We have 7 that are completed and 15 ongoing, 4 that are in progress, and 11 are for future action. So I will turn it over to Greg to talk about some policing.
So we kind of want to talk about what's going on the Vision Zero side for the Tempe Police Traffic Bureau. And so on the screen is our mission statement. And that's to reduce collisions and enhance safety on our roadways through purposeful education and enforcement. Everything that we're doing is data driven. It's got a purpose behind it. Gone are the days of just doing random things just because we like to do random things. It's now data driven. And we are specifically targeting areas where we've had either an increase or a consistency in serious physical injury collisions or fatalities. So in line with that, we have the Tempe Police Department's 3 C's. Chief Glover has implemented a policy which is well received, and that's community policing, community engagement, and collaborative leadership. Community policing and engagement is getting the community involved with the police department, so together we can create programs where we can identify problems, solve the problems. In this case, we're focusing specifically on traffic stuff. And what you'll notice on the screen, we still do traditional enforcement and education, speeding and things like that. But I really want to highlight some of the things that we're doing that specifically is for bicyclists and pedestrians to, really bring down those numbers of pedestrian, bicycle, vulnerable road users. And I'll define that a little bit, the people using the road. So what do we have? We have a bicycle and pedestrian education diversion program that we've recently implemented. And this is a program where if someone riding a bicycle or a pedestrian receives a citation from an officer, they're able to attend a diversion program similar to like a defensive driving class. But this one is online. It's presented both in English and Spanish by members of our traffic bureau. And basically what it does is it explains the bicycle and pedestrian laws in Arizona. By people being from different locations, we have a very transient population. And so like myself included, being from somewhere back east, our bicycle laws are different than say the bicycle laws in Arizona. So this kind of gets everybody on the same path. Additionally, we're rolling this out. We've sent it to our school resource officers so that they can teach this in the classrooms to our young, very new road users, both as pedestrians, bicyclists, and drivers on the roadway. So that's one of the things we're currently doing. We have a campaign right now where Lieutenant McManus and I are attending the homeless feedings every quarter. And there we are handing out pedestrian and bicycle safety flyers, as well as some bike lights. We know that some of that population does not have access to bike lights and things like that. So we want to help illuminate them at night when they're out riding on the streets to avoid them getting struck by cars. And then the GOHS funded education enforcement grant. So as previously mentioned, I oversee the GOHS grants, which stands for the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. And some of those grants are the children are priceless and precious passengers. And so what that is if somebody receives a citation for having an unrestrained or improperly restrained child in their vehicle, there's a class that they can take for a nominal fee. It waives a citation, there's a presentation, and then they receive a car seat should they need one. We also have the bicycle and pedestrian education enforcement grant, occupant protection grant, which is a seatbelt / child safety grant as well, a STEP grant, which is selective enforcement, identified, basically general enforcement of our traffic laws. Additionally, we do our community meetings in collaboration with, as part of the 3 C's, the community policing, community engagement, collaborative leadership. And one thing that we wanted to note is like education in general. So I think, using the example of distracted driving is always the easiest one, and simply having a electronic device in your hand, you don't have to be manipulating it, reading emails, sending text messages, talking on the phone. But if you're simply holding that phone in your hand, that is a violation now in the state of Arizona, one that is a primary stop. And by primary stop means you can be stopped simply for having that phone in your hand. And it's something that, we kind of have zero tolerance with right now. So we are stopping, educating, and enforcing those laws for drivers. And what we have found, it's a new law, so it's only been in effect a little over a year. statewide. The city's had it in effect for just shy of 2 years right now. We had a city code prior to having the state statute. And so we are gathering research to see if there's any correlation between having these increase in pedestrian and bicycle collisions involving drivers who are distracted. So that's some current research that we're trying to continue. And usually we look at 5 years worth of data and research. So obviously we won't have all of that for a couple of years. Partnerships, we have a great partnership right now with traffic engineering and collaborating on these projects, trying to save people's lives and protect people. We also work with SPARK, which is strategic planning, analysis, and research. Those are the folks that are behind the scenes doing all the data research, making sure that everything we're doing is intentional, is purposeful, and getting up the current data. Should we be in different locations? Are these the right locations? And then education, what I mentioned before, vulnerable road users. Those are our pedestrians, bicyclists, scooters, people who aren't wrapped around, thousands of pounds worth of steel as they're moving down the roadway. Pedestrian or a bicyclist riding a roadway on a 45-mile-an-hour road being passed by a car going 45 miles an hour. So trying to make sure we educate both sides of that with the goal of changing driver pedestrian behavior. And right now we're doing an operations plan called Operation Saving Lives. And I'm gonna turn it over to Lieutenant McManus, who's gonna explain more on that.
Thank you. So as Greg had mentioned, that everything we're doing is data driven, and he referenced the 5 years worth of data that we reviewed to determine really our operations plan for our traffic bureau for the Tempe Police Department. This information is available to you if you choose to view it on the Vision Zero website through the City of Tempe webpage. Hopefully Laura can add that to the chat so you have a direct link of how to follow it. But if you follow that Vision Zero website, there's a dashboard, an interactive dashboard on there that's a map of the city. And you're able to select years and see hotspots or areas of concern for where serious physical injury collisions and fatalities are occurring. So what we did as a police department, we looked at 5 years worth of data and tried to determine areas that there was a consistent occurrence of serious physical injury accidents and fatalities, and then focused our efforts as far as education and enforcement in those specific areas. So that's really why your neighborhood is here today and that we're highlighting it. And one of the areas of concern was Scottsdale Road between Curry and Continental Drive, and then also Curry Road between Mill Avenue and Scottsdale Road. So we have primary and secondary locations, and that Curry Road between Mill and Scottsdale was identified as a secondary location. So I'll get to that in a second and talk about the differences. But what you should expect to see on Scottsdale Road between Curry and Continental is an increase in police presence. Our goal again is to change driver and pedestrian behavior. And we're going to do that through some increased signage in our medians, advising pedestrians not to use the medians to cross Scottsdale Road. You will also see the introduction of these safety corridor signs that read strict enforcement and Tempe Vision Zero. Greg's going to talk about these a little bit more in a minute, but just seeing strict enforcement doesn't mean that everyone that's contacted by the police is going to receive a citation. But what it does mean is if we see somebody who's unsafe, such as crossing the roadway in an inappropriate manner or committing a hazardous violation, we will contact them and we will take the opportunity to educate them or to take enforcement action if necessary to change that driver behavior. So you should expect to see these safety corridor signs within the next couple of weeks. We have a total of 6 signs that are being created. 4 of them have been constructed and they should be implemented soon along Scottsdale Road. As far as the secondary location for Curry, between Mill and Scottsdale Road, we have noticed over the last 5 years that we've had a consistent occurrence of serious physical injury collisions and fatalities related to speed. Not saying that speed was the causation, but it was a factor in many of those collisions. And so we are currently in the process of evaluating speed feedback signs, which Ellie will talk about in a little bit. And then we are also directing speed enforcement in those neighborhoods as well.
So we've already talked about the data collection. So we'll go into like, what have we done and what can we do? I previously mentioned we created a Tempe City Code several years ago that was specific to distracted driving. That Tempe City Code has now kind of phased out since there's now a state statute. So any traffic or state statutes called Arizona Revised Statutes, vehicle code, or is listed under the 28 statutes. And so distracted driving, again, this is one of those things where we won't have the data for 5 years, but we are looking at current data to see if we have anything to indicate distracted driving would be any sort of causation for some of these collisions. We've already kind of harped on the targeted enforcement and education. That's our goal, is to change behavior of everyone on the roadway so that everyone's being safe. And then, as I mentioned, education for our youngest drivers through pedestrian bicycle diversion programs and defensive driving classes. So as Lieutenant McManus mentioned, you can expect to see, if you have not already, an increased police presence in these areas, the safety corridor signs. And again, strict enforcement means we will enforce the violation. That does not mean a citation per se. That just means we're going to enforce it. Could be a conversation, might be a citation. Officers use discretion as they feel necessary. Community engagement, meetings, the feedback, the observations that the community has. It's important for your voice to be heard so that we can educate each other and together achieve our common goal.
Great. So we've talked a little bit about the safety corridors, and we just wanted to give you an update on some other things that we're looking at as part of Vision Zero. Not everything, but some of the things that are kind of upcoming. One is mid-block pedestrian crossings. So we have noticed a bit of an uptick in pedestrian-related crashes. And so a lot of those have to do with crossing outside of a crosswalk. So if we're trying to give people more opportunities to cross safely. So some of the treatments we're looking at, there's a couple different options for mid-block crossings. You can see on the far left, there's a pedestrian signal, and that's just an example of one we already have on Veterans Way right in front of the stadium. We can do a striped crossing, a high visibility striped crossing, like in the middle photo. That example is from Fifth Street, right in front of City Hall. And we can also do something that's relatively new and would be new for our city. Are these, they're called rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And that would be push button activated. And when the pedestrian would like to cross, they push the button and you get these kind of blinking back and forth lights that increases the visibility for pedestrians in that crosswalk. Another initiative we're taking a look at are speed feedback signs. We have tried some, like you see on the far left, and these will read your speed as you go by and let you know what your speed is. So that if you're driving kind of on autopilot and you're not noticing that you're going too fast, this is some feedback for you. We also would like to look at some of these other options of just showing a message like you're going too fast, slow down, so that that doesn't, with the number, you might have the discretion to decide that's not too fast. But if we just give you a message that you're going too fast, then that decreases that chance. And we're looking at implementing these in very high speed, well, I shouldn't say very high speed, in areas where the 85th percentile speed that from the data we collect is more than 10 miles per hour greater than what's posted. Again, trying to follow along with the trend of being very data driven. Another project we have in our upcoming list is a neighborhood sidewalk infill project. We do a pretty good job of providing sidewalks on all of our arterial streets, but neighborhood streets, local streets are routes to transit, routes to the park, routes to your neighbors. They could be streets where kids are allowed to walk without a grown-up. We want to make sure that all of our neighborhood streets have safe sidewalks. These are just a couple examples of local streets that don't yet have a sidewalk where we could be implementing those. And some other upcoming initiatives that we're taking a look at, leading pedestrian intervals. So these are locations where pedestrians may not be something you expect to see. We want to give the pedestrians a couple seconds before the cars get a green to get into the crosswalk, get partway across the road, establish themselves, and create a greater chance of being visible to the cars around before the cars get a green. We're also recently, we just finished a peer review, updating our policy on those high visibility crosswalks that were in that middle photo from the mid-block crossing, so that we have better guidance on when we can include those. And in continuing some existing initiatives, the the safety corridor signs are going to be installed in a more mobile fashion, so that if we identify other corridors where we need to have those signs, we can move them. Again, the targeted education campaigns in conjunction with the police, and continuing our upgraded street lighting project. There's also.
And one of our upcoming projects that I'm very excited about is the civilian motorcycle school that we're looking at. Previously, we would say it's in its infancy stages. However, we're moving along pretty solid right now. What that's going to be is hopefully an approved grant to the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, where we bring in members of our community who have a motorcycle and want to learn some safety tips. And so we have our motorcycle instructor officers who will present and help do some cone work. I just attended Chandler's last Saturday to kind of see how it's run, and I was very, very impressed. Their research, they've been doing it for a little over a decade now. Their research has shown that through their civilian motorcycle class, not only have they been able to decrease the number of motorcycle related serious physical injury, collisions, and fatalities, but they've been able to really connect with the community to show a completely different side of law enforcement of like, hey, this is fun, come out and join us. We'll show you how we ride, some of the training things we do. It's a free class. It's one day. It's about 8 hours long. There's an education piece to it. There's a presentation during lunch. Lunch is provided, where there's a trauma doctor who comes and talks about the injuries that they've observed from people not, riding safe. They're not wearing helmets. The Helmet Center does a presentation, and then they raffle off a $500 gift card to the Helmet Center. So there's a lot of value in that class, and something that we are very, very excited about, and are hoping to be approved for the grant so that we can put our own about 3 times a year starting in November.
That's our presentation, and we'd love to open it up to questions.
Okay. We have quite a few, so I'll just start from the top. Justin asks, does the Lights Initiative include integration of more hawk crosswalks?
Well, on this particular stretch, of Scottsdale Road, we were looking at adding a standard traffic signal at Scottsdale Road and Lilac. There was talk of having a pedestrian signal in that area, but with the 2 streets, Cavalier coming in on one side and Lilac on the other, we determined that it was better to have a full signal. So at least on this segment, that's what will be added.
Okay, and we have a comment from Marion. There are not enough crosswalks, which would avoid a lot of pedestrian fatalities.
Right, yeah, Scottsdale Road segment does have several lights, and we are looking at ways to increase those mid-block crossing opportunities, those crosswalk opportunities. So we're taking a look at that for sure.
Thank you. And from Kim, College Road between Continental and Curry is also an area of concern due to speeding from cars avoiding Scottsdale Road.
That is an area that we are trying to encompass within the Curry to Mill, that same general area. Right now, the specific secondary focus is not on College. However, we are looking at that and enforcing that area as well.
And another related comment, I've lived on College Road for 30 years and I'm amazed at the speeding that occurs between Curry and McKellips. And we also have a question. How does strict enforcement go hand in hand with giving away to drivers to avoid a citation? I understand the education side of things, but enforcing the law to me means issuing a citation for related violations that deserve citations.
Yeah, again, and we appreciate the comment question for sure on that. That discretion is left up to each and individual officers as they're out there conducting the enforcement in those areas in education. They'll use their discretion based on how they feel for each violation that they stop.
Thank you. Another question from Kelly. There is a statement, I should say, there's a need on Curry Road between College and Mill for a pedestrian crossing. A bridge, if it is in the budget to keep pedestrians safe, would be ideal.
As was mentioned, Curry is on everyone's radar to find a way to reduce speeds. We'd have to spend some time and money on that one to figure out how to provide the best crossing, because right now it's just it's very wide.
There is an underground crossing close to Capitol Park.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, bridges are definitely an option. We did do a recent project where we looked at opportunities to create pedestrian bridges. So I know there is one being planned in the city.
Well, they were around campus. It was a joint project with ASU, and actually it's going to be an underpass.
Oh,
at College and University.
okay.
Yeah, but they looked at both. They looked at bridges and underpasses.
Okay.
Yep.
And we have another question. When will Arizona require helmets for motorcycle riders?
Mary, you and I feel very similar on this topic, especially as someone who rides a motorcycle and who investigates these terrible accidents that some would have walked away from if it were not that they had a serious head injury. Unfortunately, it's not supported by the state legislation. There are plenty of motorcycle groups out there, freedom groups, who are very vocal and anti having a law that will require motorcycle riders to wear helmets. But I am of the mindset that although I feel you should have a lot of freedoms to choose, if you get on a motorcycle, you should have to wear a helmet.
Thank you. Let's see, there's support for the Hawk crosswalks. Also, Kim says, I have heard there's a possible pilot program for putting some fencing in the median on Scottsdale Road. Is that under consideration?
Kim, you heard correctly. That's exactly right. For one, we're going to start with one section of median, and it's the one just north of Hancock. And it'll be temporary fencing, and we'll also have signs that indicate no crossing, use crosswalks. That helps with enforcement as well. So, yep, we're going to try it and see if that's helpful.
Yeah. Okay, Justin, you're unmuted if you'd like to ask your question.
Yeah, sorry, I posed the original Hawk question, and I apologize if I'm not as familiar. I looked at your plan for high visibility crosswalks and some of the other ones that you've used with the beacons. And I know in Scottsdale and Phoenix, because of distracted driving, they've seen the effectiveness of those go down. And that's why the greater implementation of Hawks. So I was just curious where the city's feeling is on Hawk integrations throughout the city.
Okay,
Not
so
just
we have,
LiDAR.
that's fine. We have a couple Hawk signals. We actually have about 22 or 3 pedestrian signals that are, and so the majority of them are red, yellow, green, seem to get better compliance than the Hawk signals. At the
Awesome.
Hawk, I don't know how often you ever use the one on, or go through the one on Rural or McClintock, but the first car goes and then everybody follows. And in my mind, there's a little bit of a conflict at that time, because even though the light is flashing for the vehicles to be able to stop and go, it's also in countdown for the pedestrians. And pedestrians aren't supposed to leave the curb when it starts to count down, but I think we all know that people look at that number and think it means they need to hurry up and cross the street. So then we tell them the cars they can stop and go, and we have the kids going. And I just think that we get better compliance, or we have seen better compliance with the red, yellow, green. So, and we have more of those. I think they're better understood by drivers. So right now, that would be our strategy. But
and just to quickly address Mary's question, a
what's
Hawk
a Hawk?
signal, it's what we call the signals where it's pedestrian push button activated, and you get these 2 big bright red stop lights. And then once the pedestrian signal is completed, the lights go flashing back and forth, and they're supposed to be treated kind of like a stop sign. You look and see.
once it starts counting.
Yeah, once it starts counting down, you look and see if there's anyone coming, and if not, you can go. But as Kathy was saying, those we have, we think we get a little bit better compliance on the traditional red, yellow, green signals.
Well, thank you guys so much for clarifying. I love the concept of the Hawk or the red, yellow, green. It's just, since neither of those were addressed in the presentation, I appreciate you taking the time to answer that.
I appreciate the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for the support.
And Marion, if you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thank you for taking my question. I had a question comment still on the same enforcing the law topic. How are you going to utilize this historical data in shaping those drivers' educational plans and programs that you're talking about? Because if you look at the data, it looks like the main reasons for crashes are like, first of all, is the speed, and then the other one is just disregarding signals. So I know we want to implement signals that gives driver an idea of how fast they're going, but I think we're also beyond that, and sometimes just, you know, giving a citation and hitting people where it hurts, where it means like their wallet is better than, you know, any kind of education, because they won't do it again.
Sure, no, and I appreciate that, Mary. One thing I want to clarify on that, you know, when we look at speed, historically and data specifically speaking, speed usually is not a factor in a collision. It's usually not a factor in the causation of a collision. It can be the factor in the severity of a collision. So a pedestrian, what our research has shown, and the data shows, is that most of the time, a very high percentage of time, not to sugarcoat it, is when we do have bicycle or pedestrian related collisions, it's as a result of a violation committed by a bicyclist or pedestrian. The speed issue ends up being the severity. So a car going 45 in a 45, or even 50 in a 45, strikes a pedestrian. A lot of times is going to lead to be a fatality. But when you look at the actual breakdown, speed wasn't necessarily a factor in that collision. We do have our eye on certain areas where we know speeding is more of a concern, and so we are addressing those areas with more enforcement than education. Our officers kind of set what they feel is their speed tolerance level that they'll accept. Once they stop the car, they're going to issue a citation. But again, it goes back to we allow our officers to make decisions every day about whether they want to use discretion, and education would be more applicable than, say, a citation.
Yeah, thank you. And if I may add, I was mostly speaking about like car speeding, because I know, well, I both my wife and I are bicyclists, and we try to, respect the roads, the rules of the road. But I think sometimes this speed, I mean, I was a firefighter for 10 years. So the speed it can cause the accident because it just removes your reaction time. And like you said, yeah, sometimes bicyclists, they're not following, and then they're committing error. But as a driver, if you don't have that reaction time, that makes it or breaks it.
For sure.
Okay, we have another question. Can you consider vehicle activated camera for speeding?
So we used to in the city have the photo radar and the photo enforcement system. However, I don't know I'm not sure about I've been an officer for 18 years. I was here before they were there, while they were there, and since they've been removed. I have concerns about having speed activated cameras personally, because they are set for a very specific speed. And when you look at Arizona revised statute, the statute says speed greater than reasonable and prudent. And I think you can argue on all sides. You could say that going 5 miles an hour over the speed limit, so they're usually set around 11 over. But if it's raining and there's puddles on the road and there's flooding and you're doing 11 miles an hour over the speed limit, I would consider that to be, a speeding violation for sure. At 3 o'clock in the morning on a very low traveled roadway, would I say that 11 over is automatically something that would cause for someone to receive a citation? I would argue against that. So that's just my personal opinion. I don't know why the city has removed those, but it has been quite some time.
Kelly, if you'd like to unmute yourself, you can ask your question.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. How are you doing? I actually just want to go over a few key points that you pointed out. Strict enforcement for the strict enforcement signs has no bite. If you're going to say strict enforcement, enforce the law. There's people that are doing 60, 70 miles per hour on Scottsdale Road. And I'm not talking about cyclists or pedestrians, because it seems like we keep leaning towards citation for pedestrians and cyclists. I think the pedestrians that cross illegally when they shouldn't be, I know there's a lot of that happening by the QT off of Scottsdale Road. As far as cyclists, we are cyclists that follow the law. I can't tell you how many times I've almost been hit by distracted drivers. If I'm at a stoplight, even in our own car, everyone's on their cell phone. If I can't see them, there's illegal tent. There is no enforcement of speed. Putting up signs isn't going to fix the problem. For example, we live off of Indian Bin Wash bike path, and Molly Enright has been amazing. And she finally was able to get signs that say no motorized vehicles. There's still motorcycles racing on this pedestrian path. You putting up a sign that's showing people their speed, they don't care. They don't care. I can't emphasize that enough. I know there are some pedestrians and some cyclists that maybe don't obey the law, but there are definitely by far more people on motorized vehicles that are the danger as opposed to the pedestrians. That's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. And yeah, you're correct in saying, I want to make sure I'm being clear. Earlier when I mentioned, we wanted to talk about some of the things that we were implementing to show some of the new things we're doing. We're still enforcing vehicle speeds by all means. I mean, that's one of our targeted things is vehicle
I think
traffic.
you're muted.
We're not.
It doesn't show that can you hear me?
You're fine.
Okay. So what happens is, we're still enforcing driver behavior, distracted driving. And when you look at the sign to say strict enforcement in and of itself, we say zero tolerance, we pull a car over. It's at that point, the enforcement piece of, do they want to issue a citation? Do they want to, educate the driver? But the enforcement piece is stopping the violator and addressing the behavior, however the officer chooses to address that behavior.
Thank you, Greg. Justin, did you have another question?
I just had two follow-up ones since we have a captive audience with the police department. Laura, and thank you for facilitating our neighborhood association meeting last night, because this is where this came up. Two quick questions, and I apologize if you addressed it. The incorporation of bike lanes on Scottsdale Road, is that in the implementation plan like Scottsdale did on McDowell? It's the first one. And then the second one, does the police department have any identification for the special operations folks that I think you referred to for street racing on Scottsdale Road south of McKellips?
Okay, I'll take the first one. So the bike lane project is a capital improvement project, and we're at about 60% design. So it's kind of a separate initiative, but it is underway, and construction will probably start, thinking like late next spring. So that is going on. And then
in terms of the issues of street racing, we don't have like a specific idea. There are many car groups and many groups out there that participate in this dangerous activity. I know Scottsdale just ran into a problem last weekend with it. We do have some measures in place to address that as it pops up in the city, and it pops up very randomly. So we do address it as it occurs.
Let me just piggyback to that. So we consider your neighborhood beat 11. I don't know if you've heard of that before, but we do have an increase in police presence in beat 11 at all hours. I just spoke to the patrol lieutenant who is in charge of North Tempe, the North Patrol officers. And we were actually just discussing the topic of street racing based on the videos that had made the news from Scottsdale over the weekend. And so he assured me that there's an increase in police presence in your neighborhoods to address that. I can also tell you that we have a DUI squad that's part of the Traffic Bureau, and they've been given direction to frequent the areas that we know street racers to frequent within the city of Tempe, and then also to have increased enforcement and education on these safety corridors of Scottsdale Road as well. One of the areas we haven't really experienced the intersection takeovers like you've seen from those videos from Scottsdale, but we do have an area of concern, which is Lakeview Drive, which is on the north side of the lake, just south of Marquee Theater. There's a large parking lot, and there's actually a small road or drive that goes through there, Lakeview Drive. So One of our meetings that we have hopefully next week is a site visit to install some tough curbing in that area to hopefully deter street racers from gathering that area. We've also employed G4S security to lock the gates and man the gates on a weekly basis to prevent street racers from gathering. And then we are in constant communication with Phoenix PD, who has a task force that addresses street racing. So they provide our nighttime sergeants and our nighttime lieutenants with real-time information about those groups as they meet up and tend to move around the valley.
Okay, thank you. And Laura knows, full disclosure, because of my day job, I sit on the Scottsdale Police Department Advisory Board for Chief Walther. And they said that they've seen an uptick in it, but they don't see it as street racing, definitely not takeovers. But we know as residents from living here that we hear the fast takeoffs and see the smoke from the rubber of just fast acceleration flying up. And Scottsdale's saying that it's purely because it's the corridor between the 202 and Old Town. So I just wanted Tempe's perspective.
Yeah, if some things I just want to add to, and it goes back to Kelly's comment about speeding. If my officers witness street racing, I expect them to take strict enforcement beyond education, depending on the circumstances. And then Kelly had made the comment that she observes people driving up to 70 miles an hour on Scottsdale Road. And the expectation, if we see that, it's not going to be education, because that's unacceptable under any circumstance. So I appreciate those comments from both of you.
Wonderful, thank you. Yeah, because they're having, you guys have probably seen it, north of Camelback 90-mile-per-hour issues. So.
Okay, we did have another question. Any chance you could have speed calming measures on Curry between Mill and Scottsdale Road?
Yeah, again, the Curry is one of those ones we're gonna have to take a closer look at. There's a lot of space out there, and it's gonna take a project in and of itself. I don't think it's an easy fix. It's not. I don't think just going on restriping is gonna make a difference. I think we're gonna have to get a project put together that we're actually probably moving some of the curbs and things in order to be effective on that piece of Curry. So
Yeah, Kathy and I had brought that up recently about some measures we could take. So that, yeah, we are considering it, to answer your question.
And Kelly, how about you unmute and you can ask your question?
Thank you so much. I guess my question is it's actually going back to the bridge. I suggested a bridge or even a pedestrian crosswalk between College and Mill off of Curry. The reason why I say that is there's a lot of hikers, mountain bikers, and they don't know that the tunnel is over on the other side of the park. So I think that is also why there's an uptick right there as far as pedestrians crossing illegally and not at a crosswalk. That's why I suggested a bridge, because then motorists don't have to get frustrated by another light or another pedestrian crosswalk being in their way, but also it would keep pedestrians safer from, crossing from both sides of the preserve, Papago Preserve. I just want to hear your thoughts and if that's something that could possibly be done. I'm not sure if you know anything about the budget or if that is in the works.
well, it's not in the works. I can tell you that it's not a listed project, and yeah, it would be a capital improvement project. So it would have to go through the budgeting process in order to be included, because it's not small dollars. It's not something that can be handled, as I said, with just striping or signage through operations. So and we probably have to take a look at some alternatives as well. So do some alternative designs and then come up with the project. So I think we will we could take the project forward to further discussion, but it'll be at least next year before it would be able to be added to the CIP. Now, are you talking down closer to and let me just clarify, down closer to College, or in the middle, in the middle between?
In the middle. So you know how it kind of goes up over that hump? So in between College and Mill on Curry. So the reason why I was making that suggestion is there's a lot of people that visit here and they don't know that there's a tunnel that connects at the east side of the park right there. So I think you run into a lot of people right there, because there's also, so we're avid mountain bikers, hikers, and we clean Papago on a regular basis. right there, you can see how people get on and off of the sidewalk on both sides when they want to connect, whether it's hiking, mountain biking, or whatnot. But I even see mountain bikers myself, and they clearly don't have an understanding of the area that they can actually go through that tunnel. And the fact that there's really only one connection point between that preserve, I think is somewhat of an issue. If you had a connection point a little, maybe, I think it's Lakeview Drive right there, if I'm not mistaken. Like
Yes.
maybe a little further east of Lakeview Drive, it might give people that tunnel access, but also the reason why the bridge would be good is no matter what, pedestrians would be safe. And you wouldn't have to worry about, someone running a pedestrian crosswalk. But I also know that budget wise, obviously a bridge would probably cost a lot more to fund. But then you actually have people that can enjoy both sides of the preserve. And then that also links to Low Piano as well.
Right, and yeah, you're exactly right. The bridge is going to be $3 to $4 million likely. And I don't know, the south side, I think there's maybe some questions about how it slopes off and how we would fit the tie in, but I'm sure it can be done. And remember, we have to account for the ADA population as well. So we have to have the correct slopes and things that makes the bridge a little bit, or the ramps up and down a little
100%.
bit longer. So, so it starts to, get a kind of a costly solution.
Yeah,
In the meantime, I think maybe signage or something to tell people about the tunnel, maybe even make sure there's some lighting. I don't know what it's like down there now, but
it's pitch black.
That might be a little bit more doable in the short term, and then look at the bridge for long term, but we'll have to take a look at it.
That's part of the reason why I suggested the bridge over another tunnel is because every tunnel I've gone through, even on Indian Bin Wash Path last week, every single 12 lights in that tunnel area, they've all been smashed.
Yeah.
So anything with a tunnel, it seems like if there is lighting, it gets smashed, and it's obviously dark. Not sure if that's fixable. I don't even know if a tunnel would be more or less cost effective, but even just a crosswalk that's in between, I think Mill and College would be beneficial, I think, for all pedestrian use.
And Kim is mentioning that there's a visibility problem there on either side of the rise.
Okay.
Jeanette's kind of wondering, where is the tunnel and is it safe to utilize? Not sure how to answer that, actually.
It's just west of College. It's if
The other side of the park.
yeah, it kind of connects in that Tempe Papago Park area where the hiking is. My kids like to run through it all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know how safe it is at night, but I know during the day my kids run through it and they've never had an issue.
And I want to jump back up here for Josh. It says, for VRU safety, are there any plans to stripe the missing bicycle lane just north of Curry on College near the new Camden Phase 2?
Sure, if we'll go take a look at it. I didn't know there was missing striping. That's is it a missing bike lane, or was it just something that didn't get restriped after, do you know? I could go look, I should be asking you, but it just got eliminated because of the development, like they were repaving or something? Do you know, Josh?
Yeah, thanks for answering my question. This is just specifically the area north of Curry on College, and the striping resumes once you get near Weber. But there's that section. It may actually be part of the Camden Phase 2 development project, but I'm not sure if
it wasn't there before, it needs to be added, you're saying?
Yeah, it's completely absent. I don't think it's ever been there.
Oh, okay, yeah, we can take a look at that.
It might be one of the only areas in Tempe on that style of arterial road that doesn't have a bike lane.
Yeah. It's a collector, and it would, but
Yeah.
yeah, we have a lane drop going on there, so I don't know. We'll have to take a look at. I think you mean north. You mean northbound?
Yeah, northbound, just north of Curry on College.
Okay.
On the north, I guess, what is it?
Right about Weber.
Yeah, north side.
Okay.
Yeah, we can take a look at it.
Okay, there's a couple of comments I think we've kind of heard. Mary says a crosswalk on Curry between Mill and College would certainly be a calming influence. And I believe Justin wanted to make a comment. Go ahead.
I just had two quick things. The traffic light at Lilac, is that, yes, that's gonna happen?
Yes.
Or is it still in community feedback phase?
You know, we had our public meetings last week, Thursday and then Saturday.
Mhm.
Is that right, Laura? And then, and we did not get any feedback to say that it was, shouldn't be done. We have a HSIP grant for it, Highway Safety Improvement Program grant to do part of it. So.
Do you know when it'll happen?
When the bike lanes are constructed on Espresso Road. So this time next year, it'll probably start construction or.
Oh, awesome. And then the only comment I wanted to make was I wanted to thank you all for taking the time to chat with us this evening. It's very helpful. And I know you guys are super busy, but if you are at all interested, I work with a nonprofit that provides cities at no cost to them education signs on bike laws. And it's a very simple sign that's being adopted by ADOT that just says state law, give bikes 3 feet.
Oh,
And because they're covering all the costs, if that would be of interest, Laura has my email and she can share it with you, but I know they're trying to implement them throughout the valley and they've had good luck in Gilbert and Phoenix, and we're working on it in Scottsdale. And just no cost to the city, but biker or vehicle driver education about the bike laws has been helpful.
Thanks for
thank
that.
you. Thanks.
Yeah, I will share your email. Okay. Anybody else have anything they'd like to add? We've still got a few minutes left. Not seeing any. Well, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight.
Oh, Kelly has her hand up.
Oh, Kelly, go ahead.
Sorry, thank you for taking my last question. I'm not sure if this is the appropriate format to ask it, but as far as bike lanes are concerned, do you know if going forward, the city of Tempe will start creating more protected pedestrian bike lanes, not just, I mean, I did attend the meeting last week for the Scottsdale Road bike lane, but I mean, going forward past that point, will there be protected bike lanes going forward?
Right, so part of the project on Scottsdale Road will show us how well it works, especially the devices that we've chosen, the tough curb. So we'll find out how that works. We have to have a little extra room to put those in, and sometimes we are constrained. So I won't say they'll be able to go in everywhere, but I do think it's a possibility that you'll see more of them across the city.
Thank you so much for taking my questions. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks. Yeah, thanks for attending, everybody. It's been a good session. I think we had some great questions today. We've recorded it, as you probably heard at the beginning of the meeting, and we will post this on our website. And if we don't have anyone else, everyone have a good evening. Thanks for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Laura.
you.
Bye all.